Hello, this is Jason Dupree of OCR Talk. This is the World's Toughest Mudder episode. Thank you for joining me. Today, I am in the heart of Florida jungle, the Florida swamps. Actually, just left Gatorland. Just pulling out of the parking lot of Gatorland. I was here with Carlo Piscatello, Francesca Chiarando, and Dustin DeRoe. They are staying a few days extra. And they're going to go to, I think, Universal and stuff before they head out. Myself, I've been traveling so much this year already. This trip was 4 work days that I already took off, so I didn't want to take off more than I really had to. So I'm heading back. I did have a later flight out today, so I did decide to go do Gatorland with them. Didn't quite get to see everything, but saw most of it. I grew up in Louisiana. So it's a lot of familiar things, a lot of sights and sounds and smells and all that from home, things that I'm used to. Brings back the childhood memories. We had a fantastic weekend at World's Toughest. The race was great. The course was fantastic. The weather was hot, but outside of that, the coverage went really well. Just all around fantastic time. We've got a little over an hour before we get to the airport. So I've got plenty of time to talk about things. Starting with the race, yeah, I think it was like 70 was the low, and the high was 86 or something like that. So it was a very hot day. When we got in on Thursday and went to the course and scoped some things out, it was hot then. When we got to the course on Friday to do the live course preview, it was hot then. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. It was already, I forget what it was. Maybe it was 80, maybe it was 75. I don't remember, but it just felt hot already. And then the day of the race, it was hot. And of course, the race started at 1 instead of noon. And I think part of the reason was because they decided, let's have a, not regular, but a normal Tough Mudder 5K. They didn't do a full 10 miles, and they didn't do a full World's Toughest 5 miles, but they had a 5K course on the World's Toughest course. Pardon me. And so they had a normal non-World's Toughest crowd out there to run that. And that started, normal time, probably 7, 8 o'clock. And then they ran them until, I think, maybe 10 o'clock was the last wave. So with the World's Toughest starting at 1, you had, basically from 10, and those people were probably taking maybe up to 2 hours. So upwards to 12 o'clock, you still had people coming across the finish line for that regular World's Toughest, which made things tricky, but it didn't really impact things too much. It was cool to see all these people out there having a good time and enjoying the course. Packed down a little bit for the runners. So it was good. I hope it was helpful for Tough Mudder to be able to, continue to do stuff like this. Like, if it didn't impact, it wasn't a negative impact on World's Toughest. So hopefully it was only a positive thing to help them have more cash to be able to work with. The course itself, I think a lot of people were saying, oh, that doesn't look different or special because it's World's Toughest. Usually in the past, you've always had obstacles that you might not see until the next year. So like kind of obstacle innovation type stuff. And they didn't have much of that. Really, the only changes that we saw to any obstacles was Pyramid Squeeze was Pyramid Squeeze, and it had a cargo net over the top of it and made it quite tough. When we went through the course preview, that was definitely the hardest part for me. Oh, that's a sweet skate park. Oh, I wish you could see that. I won't touch it because I've had people tell me about that. Touch the camera, but it had a giant skateboard as a sunshade on top of over the top of it. It's cool. But the course, lumberjacks, which is, basically the Spartan hurdles, like chest high pieces of wood that you got to go over. They had, some of them were that, and some of them were just like logs that they probably found somewhere. And they had sandbags that you had to take with you. Now, this whole thing was through probably a half mile, if not more, of deep sand. It was a tricky spot. About maybe a mile and a half into the course, maybe a little more. And yeah, it was thick. So I know that was taking a lot of people's energy. Sandbags weren't like crazy big, so it probably wasn't too drastic of a difference to have to take the sandbag with you, but you did have to take it with you over the hurdles and through that deep sand. And then there was 4, kind of similar to how it was in Laughlin, where there was like 2 sets of hurdles back to back, but then there would be another 2 set. Well, there's 2 back to back, and then another set of 2 further in that little loop that you have to take the sandbag on. Ladder to Hell was Clatter to Hell. So whereas Ladder to Hell is normally a bunch of 2x8s that are very spread apart that you got to climb, like a big ladder. And here they put plywood all the way up to the second to last rung. And then they had ropes down that. So you had to like do a rope, traverse up this wall and go over the top of the clatter. And so that was different. I'm sure that was tougher. It's definitely tougher than just regular Ladder to Hell. Other than that, I think everything was for the most part pretty standard. Oh, nope, there was one more. Birth Canal, which is you go under like a box and they'll have horizontal, you're going this way, and this way they've got basically like trenches of water, and that you're going underneath it. So it's like you're squeezing through this trenchy spot. And they put Crybaby in that. So they pumped in that menthol, that menthol gas in there, which looked really cool. When people were coming out of there, it was just so intense. I mean, there was just so much smoke, that menthol smoke coming out of there. I gotta pay a toll. Lots of tolls in Florida. And I don't really have time to not take the toll. So, bear with me. Let's see what it is. I think it's $2. So I think that was the only obstacles that were really different. Yeah, EST right at the end, electrode shock therapy. It usually has a lot of mud in it. This venue didn't really have mud, even though it was Florida and it was around a lake. It was really more sand than anything. And while most of it was fairly harder packed, a lot of grass, there wasn't a ton of deep sand except for that one spot. There was a couple of those spots that were. Hello. How much? Thank you. You too. One thing that I thought was cool. You think about those last obstacles, yeah. Everything else is pretty much standard. One thing that I thought was really cool was the pit had the course go around it. So, think of the pit as a big square, and usually the course just goes along the front of the pit, continues out, and then comes in from the other side and continues from there. But this time, the course came up to the pit and ran down the side of it and then cut left to go through the start chute. And once you got all the way to the end, to the start, you went left again and went down the other side of the pit. So it kind of horseshoed around the pit, which is kind of cool. Probably really nice for the people trying to follow their athletes, like watch them all the way through there. And the course was very accessible for people to get out there and watch their athletes on course as well, cheer them on. Plenty of roads to get around. Not that spectators were allowed to drive out there, but walking around the course was very, very accessible. And we, as rabbits, were running all over the place and down these trails and using the roads to do shortcuts and all kinds of good stuff. So it worked out really well. It's great venue, very pretty. There were alligators in that lake. They actually had they had one obstacle, Creek Crusade, which Creek Crusade is known for just being like a tromp through the water. And this time it was gonna be like at the edge of the lake, but through the water of the lake. And they saw an alligator there pretty close to that spot. So they decided to move it to a different spot that was more in like a little marshy, like offshoot of the pond. So it wasn't the big area of the pond. So there were definitely alligators, and they were sighted multiple times. They saw that one the day before the event, so they decided to move Creek Crusade. I know I saw one at least twice while I was out running around on the course. Dustin DeRoe did some drone work for us. He saw a big one. I'm not sure where, but he saw a big one with the drone and got some good shots of it. It's pretty cool. Athlete-wise, I think finishers, official past 9 o'clock in the morning finishers, there was 500 something, so like close to 600 people. I believe registration-wise, there was like maybe 800 or so. So obviously some people defer, they don't show up, but some people stop before 9 a.m. They're not counted as finishers. On the men's side, Ryan Atkins showed up. Didn't know about that until the day before. And he was running really well. He was in second place for a while. And then he stepped in a hole and twisted his ankle. And I believe heard that he twisted it twice. First time was not so bad, but then the second time was really rough. So he ended up stopping for a long time and then went back out for a finisher lap. I don't know if he actually went with the orphan tent, but that's what I had heard, is that the orphan tent was going to, people that were utilizing the orphan tent were all going to go out for a last lap together. I don't know if he did that or not, but he did go out for another lap. Probably just walked it and got himself, as an official finisher. It was really cool to see him out there. I got to run with him for a little bit while I was rabbiting, chat with him. It's good to see him. Michael Schutt, who came in second last year, second to Austin. Austin got first last year. Michael, who had stopped at like midnight and slept for like 3 hours and still got up and got second. Like, what the heck is that? That's amazing. So he, even with the heat, he ran an amazing race and basically led wire to wire. Like, he literally got in the lead. I'm going to say, I got to pay another toll. So many tolls. Hello. Boop. Thank you. He got in the lead in the first quarter of a mile, I think. Watching back the footage, he passed whoever went out the gate first before the first obstacle. And he stayed in the lead the entire race. And he ended up with 115 miles. It was, matched the previous record of Mark Vachis. I don't recall if he beat his time, though. Like, did he get 115 miles faster or not? And then Josh Fiore, who missed the podium. Yeah, missed the podium last year. After, Joe Rucco got third last year. Passed Josh Fiore while Josh was out on a penalty loop, and Joe had a bypass ban. So that was, a heartbreaking moment that everybody remembers very well, because Josh comes in across the finish line last year, like, pumped that he got third place. He had been running with a freaking messed up rib, and after falling on twinkle toes, and he gets across the finish line, and then he's cheering, and then he sees Joe standing there. He's like, no, like, his heart dropped. And, that was really wild, but he trained for this one, and he did amazing and got second place. He finished with 110 miles, and then Christian Brown Johnson finished with 105 miles with, I forget exactly where Joe was, but there was 9 people, I think, 9 guys that got over 100 miles, got 100 miles or more, which is amazing. Now, people will probably want to say that the easier obstacles attributed to it. I would say, definitely that it was flatter, that attributed to it as well. But I was still surprised to see that kind of distance because of the heat and that big sand section. I thought for sure those two things would have slowed people down. But people just keep getting better. Last year you still had, even with those long penalties, you had the guys that didn't need to do penalties, like Austin, still get 105 miles. I think there were 6 people that got 100 last year. Can't remember for sure. But this year, 9 people. It's crazy. So, what was it? 100 miles, 4th place, I think, got 100 miles. 5th place, 6th place, 7th place. All these guys got 100 miles. Nuts. So looking at the age group winners, you had 2 guys that actually finished together on purpose, I think, but they had both had 100 miles, and they ended up tying first for their age group because they crossed the line together. Nuts. On the women's side, we had Nikki Karamba, who I think she won Europe's Toughest Mudder. She's from South Africa. And Jenny Stipp, formerly Jenny Overstreet. She got married. Jenny Stipp, she was, I think, the favorite, or at least, like, the watch for her. And she was in the lead for a while. And I'd say maybe halfway through the race, I forget exactly when, but eventually Nikki passed her and ended up finishing with 95 miles. So 95 miles was a finishing mileage that no woman has ever gotten before. A few women have gotten 90. Chris Rugosky last year, Millie Boone, Rhea Coble. Maybe that's it. Katie Knight did in 21. And and then Chris Rugosky got 100 in Alabama. But no woman has ever finished with 95. So that was a pretty unique thing, pretty amazing thing that she did that. And again, it's not like, yeah, the obstacles were, I want to, we'll just say that they were not as unique. They didn't add an extra level of toughness on a lot of them. But even like Funky Monkey, you still didn't see people finishing it towards the end. I think most of the top guys probably were, but I know I saw Nikki go through towards the end, and she made it maybe like halfway. So it was, the course was beating people up just as it ever does. And that one honestly didn't have a short penalty. You had to take a croquet mallet and hit a croquet ball around this little course. It wasn't a short course. I wouldn't say it was as long as the croquet that they did in, where did they have croquet that I filmed? Maybe that was Alabama. I don't know. I remember they had a big croquet course one time somewhere. So yeah. So the penalties, they didn't go crazy with penalties like they did last year. They weren't gigantic, long penalties. Particularly like the one out of, Swung, it was a bouncy hop, and it was a third of the distance of the bouncy hop from 22 in Alabama. That one was really long. They even shortened it at one point. I didn't go down through, I totally forgot to do this, but I didn't go through the penalty for Everest. It was called Run Forest Run, and it was definitely the longest penalty. So that was, they had some, but I don't know for sure how long it was. Yeah. Penalty for EST was called Joe DeSena, and it was 30 burpees. So if you couldn't or didn't want to go through EST, you could do burpees instead. 30 burpees to get out of that. And 30 burpees is a good couple minutes if you, minute and a half if you're doing it steady and consistent and strong. But EST, I think I was getting at this earlier and maybe I missed it. EST normally has a lot of mud at the bottom of it, and it didn't this time. They actually had a tarp, and probably because it was all sand and the water would just soak away anyways. So they had a tarp down underneath it, and it was just all water underneath there. So it was fairly clean water in comparison. And so, yeah. And also before that, you came out of Everest and then the Arctic Enema and Block Ness Monster, and then Mudderhorn, and then EST. So you had already got yourself pretty clean before you got there, because there was mud on the course. It just wasn't a lot. At first, Kiss of Mud looked like it was all sand, but it ended up getting muddy, and then everything after it was muddy for a little ways. And then where, what was it called? Creek Crusade was muddy through there too. Oh, pardon me. I just had an ice cream, so I think it's trying to put me to sleep. Nikki Crumb in first with 95 miles. Jenny Stipp in second with 90 miles. And Sarah Tucker in third with, I think, 85 miles. And normally they give like the leader bibs at some point. They give leader bibs to the top 3 to 4, depending on how close the race is. The women's race was so close with basically 3rd through 6th that they gave 6 women leader bibs. Pretty wild. Sarah stayed strong and held on to her position and took it home. So great race. Ooh, excuse me. Heartbeat. Yawning right in the camera. As far as the coverage goes, this had to have been the best cell signal we've seen at a course ever. It was weird because you didn't get full bars the whole time, but it was still just a very strong, fast speeds. We did use Starlink for our production machine, and interestingly, as good as the cell signal was, we probably would have been better off going off the cell signal for the production machine instead. So there are times like when you're watching the show, if the audio for the commentators cuts out or stops for, like, freezes for a bit, that's probably why, because while the speeds were pretty good, the uploads were only around 10 gigs, maybe more, 10 megs. Oh, this yawning ain't no good. I don't need to be doing this. And the signal, I think, was just, it's satellite, so it was just not as consistent as it could have been. It was pretty good. I think overall it's probably 95%, 98% uptime, to be honest. So pretty darn good. And we had Will and Francesca on commentary, Carlo out doing social media, myself, Evan Preparis, Mike Stefano, all rabbiting, and Dustin Dro doing drone work, and then Jack Norris doing photography, of course. So we had a great crew. Really awesome to have that many people working the event, because it worked great. Like, we almost always had somebody out on course, a rabbit out on course, and we had the 5 Mevo cameras out on course at different points in time. And then we had a camera at the finish line and the drone. So it worked out really well with that. Signal was really good. The picture, like, going back and looking at some of the video, way better than I thought it was going to be, because I set all the videos. I knew that they would be more or less good cell signal, but I still wanted to play it safe. So I went with 720p instead of 1080, and I set the bandwidth usage to 2.5 megabytes or 2,500 kilobytes. And it worked great. Like, watching it back, I have a hard time telling that it's 720 instead of 1080 also on most of the phone shots. I need to get some energy drinks. So I need. And the production had a few neat things that we did. I set it up to where they can change the cameras, they can show some graphics, they could show the comments from YouTube. And one of the new additions we had was, as the obstacles open, I use what's called a rundown in this program called Central Control that I use. And the rundown lets me time things out and have them happen. I can trigger events off of that, trigger things that happen off of that event. So what I did was 4 minutes before the top of the hour, because obstacles open from the first hour till 10 hours in, 11 o'clock. So at the top of the hour, 4 minutes before the top of the hour, the graphic would show up and there would be an asterisk next to every obstacle that was about to open. And at the bottom of the screen, there was a clock showing how long it was till those obstacles were open. And when top of the hour hit, the asterisk went away. The color of the circle turned green to show that it was that obstacle was open. And then on those, as the hours kept happening, those ones that turned green stayed green until the whole list was all green. And then, so at the top of the hour, the circles turned green, and then 2 minutes later, the graphic went away. So it was just something that the commentators didn't have to deal with, and it showed some good information for the audience. So I was really happy with that one. It went really well, worked really well. Uh, and then on the left side of the screen, we had kind of like an F1 style of leaderboard. We ended up going with the first 4 letters of each person's last name, because you can't fit everybody's full name in there. Even just the last name would be too many letters. So hopefully people could still tell who was who. I don't know, but that's, if you got some feedback on that, just let me know. And then the race clock was on that as well. And we also had, this was something I had done before, but this was a new way that I did it, where the commentators had a program that I pulled up on the computer, and they could type in either a bib number or a person's name and hit like submit, and then it would show all of the stats for that person. How many miles, how many laps, what was the last obstacle that they were seen at, what was the last time of day that they passed that timing mat, all this kind of good stuff. And that populated so they could look up any person they wanted, and then that would populate a Google spreadsheet that was feeding the graphics in the show. So that worked really well. Very pleased with that. No hiccups there. Oh goodness, I'm tired. I do need to get gas at some point anyways. So I got 15 minutes till I get there, so might have to get something sooner. Having Mike and Evan out on course was awesome. They did a great job. Both of them chatted with the athletes some. Evan did some obstacle previews where he would talk about the obstacles, talk about techniques, and then he would do the obstacle, and then they would watch athletes go through some of the obstacles. So that worked really well. He did a fantastic job with that. He actually picked up rabbiting really quickly. I didn't really have time to go through all the nuances of rabbiting, but he picked it up very well, and he was a pro from the start, I think. And then let's see. So the rest of the race went pretty, as far as producing the show, it went well. We swapped streams a couple times to be able, so the video would save instead of going away once we're done. And let's see, I ended up running 43 and a half miles myself. I ran 45 last year. And honestly, this year, the heat was just, I've talked about this before. The heat is rough on me, so it made it really hard. I felt more tired. I feel like I've been running a lot this year, but I definitely felt more tired, and my feet hurt more. And I just felt like I had a harder time this year than I did the past couple of years. But it was still a lot of fun. I still had a blast. Running with the athletes, helping provide this for everybody to watch back home. They had the Jumbotron in the pit, so we were able to see that. That was great. Something that people suggested that we'll definitely do next time is to turn on closed captions so that the people in the pit, we can turn on the closed captions on that video and they can see it, because we never have the sound on that video on the Jumbotron. So that'll be good for next year in UK at Beaver Castle. So that'll be cool. We did talk about ways that we can communicate better as a team. Maybe we need to go to walkie-talkies. I still have some walkie-talkies that I bought for us, that Will bought for us, and we can. I want to give those another try. They add a lot of weight to my luggage, but I think they can definitely be helpful. So we'll definitely give it a try next time. Now we've got a team of people that will be good utilizing such tools, because we can't just turn on the mics for everybody, because the commentators would hear it all. It would just be really tough. We need something that you can switch a channel if you need to, turn it on and off as you need to, whereas you can't do that with Rivet, or even when we switch back to Larry's, you can't really do that. basically, if your phone, if your camera is on the screen, then your audio is live as well, which allows the commentators to hear it. But otherwise, you don't want, a group of people all talking and chatting with athletes on the other side, and then you're hearing every word everybody says. That wouldn't work. I'm way more tired than I should be right now. Then we did the live stream for the awards brunch too, and it went really well. New stuff that we did this year. Not only did I have my DSLR as the main camera, which we were a little further back than I'd like to been, so it didn't come out as clear of a picture as it could have been, but I had a camera on the back of the stage looking out at the audience, so that was really cool. And it was kind of tricky getting all the videos to sync up and the audio to sync up, but I think I did a pretty good job. Watching it back, I feel like everything was pretty in sync. Except for that camera that was looking out at the crowd. I feel like it was behind a little bit. Don't know why. We had the nice headsets for the commentators, so that was really helpful. Oh, at the awards brunch, they had a normal mixer for the microphones that the host used, which was us. Will and Francesca hosted the awards brunch, which is very cool. And I was able to feed a line out of it into my mixer as an input, and that way the live stream, sound was way better than it was last year, where it was just the cameras picking up whatever they could. So we actually had straight from the microphones into my mixer, straight into the show. That was fantastic. And then we did some interviews after the show. Sadly, the interviews, while some of the interviews I went through, even though the internet was great there, we were still on Wi-Fi, so it did have its moments of inconsistency. And at some point, while the second to last interview was happening, I guess the internet cut out for long enough that it caused basically the call-in, so the cameras that we were using for the show, we were calling in to vMix, to the production platform, and sorry, can't believe I'm so sleepy. This is ridiculous. The call in to the production platform was touchy. It didn't stay super consistent. So at some point, when it disconnected for long enough, it caused it to not reconnect. And that was a problem. That caused the screen to just be black. And next thing I know, I'm interviewing somebody, I'm talking to Evan. I talked to Corey for a while, Corey Edwards. And then I talked to Evan, and then somebody walked up to me and showed me the YouTube feed that was just black. I was like, oh, come on. How long has this been going? So I went back and looked, and it was during the third to last interview, because Evan was the last one, Corey Edwards was the second to last one, and Will had been talking to Tyler Veerman and Mark Goddett before that, who won the team race with 125 miles. Two guys, taking 10 turns. I think they were doing 10 miles apiece, taking turns, and got 125 miles, which is pretty amazing. Oh, and then we also had the slideshow in there. So when, instead of having a camera looking at the slide, the screen, it was the actual slide deck that I could pull up on the screen. So that looked really clear. And then whenever they showed the video at the end of the brunch, I had the video in the production too. So I showed the video. I accidentally had the audio up from the microphone still at first. So whenever the video starts playing, for the first maybe 5-10 seconds, you can hear the audio from the video echo, it was repeating in the background. But whenever the video played, I did fix that at some point, 30 seconds to a minute in, and then the rest of the video, all of the video, you could hear, it looked super clear because I was just playing a video in the production. I wasn't watching a camera on the screen. So it all went really well. I was very, very pleased with it. Very happy, very just excited about our team. Everybody worked so hard and just did an awesome job. Technology-wise, there's very few hiccups. There was a few, as there usually is, but very few. Very small amounts of things that I had to troubleshoot through to take care of. But that's it. That's all of it. That is the race. Oh, and then we went to Gatorland today. We went to the bar crawl last night. It's a good time there. And next year, going to the UK. So get excited about that. Basically, time to start looking at flights. See if there's anything that makes sense. Book out Airbnb and such. So that's the plan. Can't think of anything else off the top of my head at the moment. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for listening. I'm going to stop and get me an energy drink so I don't fall asleep. And I will be at Decker World Championships in the early December. Second week in December? Second or third week in December. And we're going to have a good time there. So that'll be the next time that we go live. That'll be the next show that we have all together. And that'll be the last show for the year. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. If you got to get on there and watch, give us some feedback if you've got it. Let us know where you think that we could possibly improve. And let us know what you liked in particular. What should we repeat so we know what did you particularly like so we know what to repeat. Yeah. Thanks again. See ya.